Call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Helsley.
Here.
Hare.
Here.
Herman.
Here.
Kaufman.
Here.
Newhouse.
Here.
Yarko.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We do not have any public hearings tonight, nor do we have any presentations. Public comments. Do we have anyone that would like to come forward and give a public comment?
Good evening. My name is Pete Ranta. I live at 365 North Oregon Avenue. I have a public comment on, which coincidentally coincided with the noise ordinance, the current noise ordinance, and hopefully something that will go along with the proposed noise ordinance. We, as neighbors, have at border Oregon and Emerson have a neighborhood church that, according to the police records, have had 55 noise violations calls in the last 16 months. The current ordinance states the following acts are declared loud, disturbing, unnecessary noises in violation of this section: the playing of any radio, stereo system, or other device emitting sound or any musical instrument so that the sound is audible from a point of 50 feet or more from the place where the sound is coming from. Subparagraph B says the keeping of any animal which emits a sound which is audible at point 50 feet or more. And subparagraph C said the operator of an authorized emergency vehicle while in the performance of his or her duties shall be exempt from these provisions. An authorized emergency vehicle is a police vehicle, vehicles of the fire department, or an ambulance. We had, as neighbors, had logged several phone calls dating back from June of 11. Matter of fact, the first one in the log report was from June 2nd. After several phone calls, we were advised by one of the police officers to meet with the church members to kind of resolve the situation ourselves. Makes sense to take care of it at the lowest level. So we met, and we had a meeting with 6 neighbors and 6 church members. The meeting was discussed that the pastor knew of the ordinance, downloaded the ordinance, and read the ordinance. We had asked why he was still in continued violation of it, and he said, well, we thought maybe us neighbors would give him a break. We went through the ordinance briefly about the 50 feet, and if it is audible from 50 feet, meaning if you can hear it. We all shared our experiences about being able to hear the noise inside of our homes, not just outside our homes. We went through several examples of how how the noise could be attenuated. You have to redo your structure. It's going to cost a lot of money. But the simple answer in the long run was just turn it down. That's all we were asking for. We're not asking for them to move, change their religious practice. Just turn it down. Simple turning of the knob. That's all it was. That's all we asked for. Solutions such as planting trees and shrubbery along were brought up, but it was agreed upon by the church that this was not a quick or reasonable answer, and there actually has been a suggestion by the church to put up a fence to border said property. A letter was sent to me by their attorney asking if I would oppose that, and I just said no because it doesn't directly border my property. Which I said, but still putting up this fence wouldn't do anything anyways. We talked about sound decibel measuring devices, and I said, well, the ordinance clearly states if it is audible, and the definition of audible is can be heard at 50 feet. So you can have all the measuring devices you want. These are the measuring devices right here. It's measurable, and it qualifies. There have been several police reports that I was able to obtain copies of due to the Freedom of Information Act. I won't go through all of them. I'll just highlight a few. Is that many times the police officers call to the site and then we're told we're not turning it down anymore. We know that there's a complaint, but there'll be more. One of the officers measured as he parked on Oregon Avenue, measured from the police car to the backyard of the complainant, and it was 133.6 feet, just to their parking lot. Another police report had it documented that from the church to the same point on the city street, of which the officers clearly stated in their report that they heard the sound upon exiting their car. That distance was 371 feet, over 7 times the ordinance requirements. Remember the term audible. There was a letter sent by the village attorney on reportedly in one of the police reports on August 1st. At this time, there were already 24 voice or noise complaints. Something else to be noted was that one of the police reports said, I noticed the music was louder than had been during the last complaint received on 8/12. I did not make with Elevate as previous contacted by Morton Police Department officers has proven to be ineffective. We had at one time their attorney sent me a sound analysis that was done at the property lines, stating that it would be impossible for us to hear the noise inside of our houses, which I had a city police officer stand inside of our house. First, we stood outside, heard the ambient sounds, the interstate, the general ambient noises of what's going on in Morton, and the Elevate Church. And then we stepped inside the residence, closed the door, stood in the middle of the living room, and he put in his report what sounded to be drums was heard while in the residence. Once again, we're using these measuring devices. Now, it's true, you can stand there with a measuring device and you can watch the meter and it won't move, but you can clearly hear the sound. That was confirmed by, I talked to 2 professional sound recording device companies that said the same thing, is you'll hear sounds, but they won't be picked up on a meter. Another time we had a police officer that came by when we were standing outside listening and said that the police officer was interested in buying one of the houses on Emerson. But when the police officer asked the realtor, is this a house that borders back up to the Elevate Church? And when the realtor said yes, they said, no deal. Find me someplace else. We can go for quite a while. We have other residents here that are going to have some speaking time. But one thing I would question on the new ordinance is who's going to enforce it? Is the Morton Police Department going to walk around with sound meters? Is it going to be by a distance? Is it going to be with meters? Or is it going to be an opinion? Caution, if it's done with meters, you're going to have to measure the sound while the sound is occurring and while there is the normal ambient sound. Then you're going to have somebody wash that sound and to actually document What is the sound that's disturbing and what is not? And then that can be even argued upon. So once you start involving technology, it doesn't simplify anything. If anybody says computers have simplified our lives, they've made more of our lives. Same thing with measuring with sound devices. Well, these work, and people can process, that is the sound that I hear. That is the disturbing sound, or they can't hear it. It's that quick and that's that easy. So I know you're coming up on discussing or voting on a new ordinance, but I would question some of those things because they could just turn into snowplow into something else that's going to take forever, and who knows how long it'll be end up in courts. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm sure some of the other residents will have their opinion also. Thank you.
Anyone else like to come forward?
Hi, good evening. I'm Art Netherton. I'm at 377 North Oregon. I also border Elevate. I've lived there 25 years, been through several congregations in that location. This is the first time we've had an issue with any of them. In the beginning of when they first took over this location, about the first 3 months, it was just pretty much a normal church activity. Then suddenly their format changed, and it got extremely loud. And I do have to give them credit and be honest that from that point to now, it has gotten better. But better is not necessarily cured. The better is that 2 years ago, I'd be asleep in my bedroom at the at 7:30 in the morning and be shaken awake by the music and the drums and the bass from this location. They've cleaned it up. It has gotten a little bit better, but it's still not there yet. The people that live to my south tend to get more of the sound than I do just because of the shape of the building. The back slope of their roof faces directly into Pete and Bill Morton and Chris Erickson's yard, and I'm further to the north. But I also get the benefit of that. I think what's really got the people upset in the neighborhood is their lack of cooperation. When we met with them, there was just an arrogance about we don't really have to comply. We've talked to the police, we've done everything, and we're just go ahead and challenge us because we're we just don't have to bother with this. To the point that they got a win with their building with the sign. It's not a sign; it's a feature that's got their name on it, but it's a sign. But no, it isn't. Kind of discussion that they won through, and now even with this discussion we're having about the sound ordinance week after week after week, they've taken to on Saturday morning blocking their parking lot just before the 8:30 before the early service to force their cars, the initial early arrivals, out onto these city streets, which clogs up the they're doing nothing illegal. On-street parking is perfectly legal unless they're in front of a fire plug or they're crowding a driveway or something of that nature. However, a lot of the neighbors saw that as a retaliatory kind of a move. So we'd like you to make sure you take a good look at this ordinance and make sure that if there are issues with this church and we continue complaining as neighbors, that there is some resolution to getting this thing solved before our property values are actually affected by this. And the discussion with the fence, we got a letter from their attorney, just like Pete did, that suggests that they may put a fence on top of an 18 to 48 inch berm with the fence on top to try to mask the noise. I expressed my displeasure with that in discussion with the church's attorney. Said, I bought that piece of property knowing that church was back there. It's open. That's where we like it. There's no fences between the neighbors hardly there. So it would also become a maintenance issue because somebody's got to maintain both sides of the fence, and if it's not on my property, I'm certainly not going to maintain it. So it creates, that's not going to be the solution. So what if they put the fence up and we still get sound over it? I mean, now what do we do? So all of this taken into consideration, I'd really like to make sure you can consider these things and trying to get a proper ordinance that can rectify some of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Thank you for hearing us. My name is Bill Martin. I'm at 1077 East Emerson. I'm on the corner also. And I want to understand, I applaud the church for growing their congregation. That's a wonderful thing they've done. And we gave them a simple solution. Turn it down a little bit. That's all we've asked for. I mean, not all of us have the same schedules. Some of us work nights, some of us work days. And we understand that. But not all of us get up at 8 o'clock in the morning on our days that we can sleep in. And when you start hearing that bass constantly drumming, coming through your house, it does get aggravating. My wife would like to lay down in the backyard to do her sunning and stuff. You can't do it because the peacefulness of the neighborhood is now gone. Like I said, I applaud the church. I'm for any religious organization doing their best to grow. But if that was any other type of business, they would have been getting fines by now. And that's the whole point. If it was me, someone would be knocking on my door telling me to turn it down. So that's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello. I'm Chris Erickson. I'm obviously the youngest of the bunch. I'm not going to sit up here and rehash everything that they've gone through. I mean, we all have very similar examples, very similar stories. I know a lot of my frustration stems from the fact that I have a very young daughter at home, and there have been multiple times when I've gone to put my daughter down for a 9:30 nap in the morning, and I've stood in her bedroom as I'm putting her in her crib, and I've heard, the bass thumping in her bedroom. I've woken up a couple times with the bass going in the morning. So again, I mean, it's exactly what my neighbors have said. We're hearing it all day in the house. A really good example, I think, actually happened to me yesterday. I was outside doing some yard work around 9 o'clock in the morning. And again, being the young one in the group, I have my iPod in with my earbuds. And as I walked out of the front of my house, out of the garage and around the side, I'm in the very front of my house, and I could actually hear the music coming from the church over my iPod, which was in my ears. And so they've talked about, decibel levels and all these things. And I'll be honest, I don't know the first thing about sound waves or decibels. I just know that if I can stand in the front of my yard or across the street at the neighbors across the street, and I can hear the music there, I mean, that's too loud for me. I also know at one point, and we've had a couple police officers confirm this to us, that there was a sign posted in their church stating that if the music is too loud, they would provide some kind of ear protection device. Now, I did talk to a member from the church yesterday, and they said that they took that down. I find that kind of coincidental, seeing as everything that's going on now. So, again, I hope when you guys are thinking about the ordinance, you consider us and how you word everything for the safety of, or not the safety, but just the respect that we feel that we're not being shown by the church right now. So, thank you.
Thank you. Chris, could we have your address?
I'm sorry, 371 North Oregon Avenue.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hello, Jamie Squire, 1049 East Emerson, directly behind the church. I've been calling on them for years and got no response. And when I went over to actually talk to him to try to settle things down, I told him I wanted to be a nice neighbor and didn't really want to call the police or anything. And I was told, go ahead. I have a friend on the force. See how far it gets you. This is how they are to work with. They don't care about their neighbors. They don't care about anything but them. And they are loud. And it's aggravating. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you for giving your comments. Very interesting. Next item under public comments is request for removal of items from the consent agenda. Are there any items in the consent agenda that the public would like to move move down to action item 8, consideration of items removed from the consent agenda. The consent agenda tonight is the approval of minutes for the regular meeting of October 15th, 2012, approval of the bills, ordinance number 12-15, an ordinance authorizing the sale excuse me, of cardiac monitors, batteries, chargers, and associated equipment. This is excess equipment of the fire department. We have new equipment that has replaced this. Ordinance number 12-17, an ordinance amending Title IX, Chapter 4, Section 54, and Chapter 6, Section 2 of the Village Municipal Code. This relates to speed limits and parking restrictions in the Grundy School vicinity. Over the last few months, we've had discussions with the school district and their concerns and our concerns about speeding traffic and some parking concerns, and this is a response to those discussions. There are no resolutions. Under other business, approval of a health insurance renewal. Is there any items that the audience like to move down to action item 8? Hearing none, is there any items the board would like to move down?
I'll be abstaining because I work for the agency that represents the health insurance.
Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved, Your Honor.
Second?
I'll second.
2 seconds over there. Any discussion? Roll call.
Belsley.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Herman.
Yes.
Kaufman.
Yes.
Newhouse.
Yes.
Yarko.
Abstain.
Motion passed. I did not have anything on the written agenda tonight, but something has come to my attention that I want to talk to a little bit about tonight, and that is we have received some phone calls from the community about concerns on the garbage contract that we have. I would like to state a couple of 3 points, hopefully to clarify some of these concerns. The majority of the concerns that we're getting are from individuals who are retired, many times only put their garbage out every other week or every third week, and that they feel that this is going to be a significant increase in cost. That is exactly what my concern was when this was brought to me after the negotiations were completed. I too am in the same situation, but I want everyone to understand that we got the best deal we could get. Bottom line, for the services we received, we got the best deal for the price. The second point that I'd like to make is all those years that I was putting garbage out every 2 or every 3 weeks, the people who had bins were paying for the privilege for me to put the garbage out the days that I did not. There is a cost every time that truck goes by your house. And it's not just the cost of the garbage, there is a cost of driving by your house. And so I understand and I appreciate the concerns, especially for the people that are on fixed incomes. But we just couldn't do better than this and get the services that we felt that were necessary for this community. The other thing that I'm hearing is that some people are criticizing 1 or 2 of our board members for this action. I would like to point out that there was no 1 or 2 individual board members who had anything to do with this. There was a group of people who did negotiate the contract. And for the third time, I will say it's the best we could get. And so what I'm suggesting is please do not shoot the messengers, the people that are standing up and saying this is what the contract is about. If I remember right, every member of this board approved that contract. So don't shoot the messenger just because we ask 1 or 2 board members to report out what the contract is. It's all of our responsibilities for those of us who sit around this table, and we accept that responsibility. And that is our job. So I am sorry that the price went up. For 7 years, your price remained the same. We just could not do that any longer with the present economy, with the present workers' compensation laws, with the present EPA laws. It's just impossible to do any further. So, I appreciate your concerns. I appreciate that you are contacting us and stating your concerns, but I want to officially state, I'm sorry, we just can't do anything different than what we've done.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd just like to add one thing to that. There is no way any firm was going to touch what we used to get our garbage for. And the bare minimum, a sticker would have gone up, if you wanted to keep the sticker program, to $9, $10. There was nobody going to even touch what we were getting. So we tried to get the best deal, and we did. And we don't forget the next one was another $5 or $6 higher per month. So you're correct, Norm. The honest effort was to get the best deal.
The cost to recycle.
And the cost of recycling.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, do you have anything?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Madam Treasurer / Controller.
Okay. First of all, I am requesting approval to transfer $2,000 from the general fund and $13,000 from the water and wastewater depreciation fund to the capital projects fund.
So moved. Second.
Second. Discussion. Roll call.
Hare,
Yes.
Herman,
Yes.
Kaufman,
Yes.
Newhouse.
Yes.
Yarko.
Yes.
Belsley.
Yes.
Secondly, in your packets,
Could you
will-
move your microphone a little closer to you?
Sure.
Thank you.
Sorry. You have a resolution number 18-12. It's a resolution authorizing agreement with Payment Services Network. And what this is this is a service that will allow us to accept MasterCard, Visa, and Discover payments of our residents' utility bills, eventually leading into permits, permit payments, and ambulance billing, even possibly police fines. And this service, we find that we're over and over again, we're having people ask us when they come in if we accept credit cards. And it's kind of one of those things that I think we've decided we probably should move into. We've made a lot of technological advancements in the village in this last year, and I think this is another one that we maybe should consider. This service will also allow us to produce electronic billing for customers that choose that option, so they could have an e-bill sent to them. So basically, they would set up an account. When we do the bills each month, it would shoot out an email to them saying you have a new bill ready. They could log into their account. They can pay it online, or just see what their payment will be. And they can use a credit card or an e-check to do that. So with that, if we have more people signing up for e-bills, that will also help us bring down some of the costs associated with accepting credit cards. We'll have with reduced postage, the paper billing, and also the postage and staff time that is required. So I'd like you to consider that.
It's mine and the administration's recommendation that you approve resolution authorizing agreement with Payment Services Network Incorporated. I would like you to be aware, though, that there is an additional cost on that. There is a cost to us, just like when we go to the Kroger store or whatever and buy groceries and use a credit card, there is a cost to those stores, too. So there will be an additional cost to us, and some of that may be in the future be passed on to the entire community to offset that cost. So we will be looking at what that cost will be, and we'll be reporting back to the board.
Move approval, Your Honor.
Second.
Any discussions?
I have a question. Is there any additional fee for the consumer? Any additional fee tacked on to the
No.
actual cost of their bill?
The village will absorb that cost. We may have to
Okay.
look at adjusting our service fees or something in the future. We really would have to take it right now and kind of take a look at how much are our costs going down in terms of what we're saving by people doing
right.
e-bill and all of that. I can say that the utility, for utility bills, you get a lesser rate than you do for things like permits, ambulance billing, all of that. So right now, the village would absorb it.
Okay.
The past credit card that we used, I think
Right.
you were absolutely right. There was a cost to the person that was doing the card.
It was
That would
$5.95.
discontinue.
$5.95 a charge is what they would be charged before.
One of the things that would also be helpful, though, is you would be able to reduce your accounts, but, you know, the billing cycle for our outstanding bills for some of the people in the community by providing an alternate payment for them. So that's an advantage to the village, very much so.
Sometimes we have to shut off water, gas, whatever, because the payment date is at a time that's 2 or 3 days different than
Absolutely.
what their paycheck date is. And
Yep.
that costs them significantly. So you're
Absolutely.
right on.
Or the people that are out of town or out of state in the winter, I think it'd be more convenient.
Any other discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Hare, were you the second?
Yes.
Thank you. Herman,
Yes.
Kaufman,
Yes.
Newhouse.
Yes.
Yarko.
Yes.
Belsley.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
The second item on my list is Resolution 19-12. It's a resolution amending the village's administrative policies and procedures manual. This is in relation to, we're coming up on our grant round for the facade grants. And we found last year after we went through our first grant round, there were a few things that we needed to clean up or make clear to make this process go more smoothly. And one of the items is they decided they would like to see a sign committee formed that will review signs ahead of time, because what they found is a lot of times you will have a group that they get this, you go to someone to get the signs, but the sign person doesn't know what we're looking for to keep with this downtown theme. So this committee would take a look at these applications in November. It would just be, all that would be required on that first Monday in November would be that they submit a picture of the building or the facade that it's going on, and they would paste the picture over it, tell what the materials will be used, and the size and dimensions. We would run that by Roger just as a first glance, kind of as we do these grants anyway, just saying, do you see anything that sticks out here that we really need to mention and make note of? Then they would look at it, and they would take those next November and December to work with the businesses to help get them into kind of a sign that fits with the downtown requirements. And then that would go into the January 31st application process. The one thing that did come up in this is that they realized, or they wanted to see so we have new businesses moving in. They can't wait that entire year to put up a sign, but they still wanted them to be eligible. So they wanted to put it out there that if you were a brand new startup business as of February 1st, which would be after the previous grant round, that you could apply to be sort of in arrears of your grant, or you could apply for a grant. That was another one. There were a few items, such as they wanted to add things to the application, noting only exterior work. We had some people that last year they included interior work in their total project cost, so we were having to back that out to make sure that they weren't receiving too much. And we also wanted to see, just make sure that they had a completed package or application, because we had a few that weren't completed, they weren't signed. So we had asked for that. I should mention that the signs for this year, if you guys do approve doing the signs, that it would be optional this year just because of our time frame, and then it would become a mandatory thing in the next year. So I'm not sure if tonight, if you want to ask questions and look it over, or if it is something you
Why
feel
don't we make a
comfortable with.
recommendation first? The mayor and the administration recommends resolution amending village administrative policies and procedures 1912. Is there a second?
I will second. I want to make it clear so there's no confusion for anybody watching or listening. The proposal for the signs for the downtown development area is still subordinate to the existing sign ordinances and subject to review, and that is why in the process it goes in front of the planning and zoning officer. So people should not be confused. It's a sort of two sets of rules for signs, and it may be at some point that the plan commission will need to review and recommend some changes in the sign ordinance to accommodate what will become a downtown design. But as it is recommended now, there is adequate review process to make sure that it meets both the objectives for the downtown development objectives and the existing ordinance that controls signs. Okay, thank you. Second.
Further discussion? Roll call.
Kaufman.
Yes.
Newhouse.
Yes.
Yarko.
Yes.
Belsley.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Herman.
Yes.
Motion passed. Thank you. Chief.
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Counselor?
I have nothing.
Chief?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Mr. Luttermill?
Yeah, tonight I have in front of you resolution number 17-12. This is a resolution authorizing an agreement with Morton Township. As you all know, we have an excellent relationship with them, and this is basically an agreement with the township where we'll provide them with our GIS mapping information. Basically, that's them paying for a license. They're going to pay all the fees, all that, to use in the things they do over there. Mainly Vivian, the township assessor.
Looking for a motion.
It's our recommendation for approval of
Move
resolution
approval.
17-12.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Newhouse.
Yes.
Yarko.
Yes.
Belsley.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Herman.
Yes.
Kaufman.
Yes.
Motion passed. Mr. Spangler?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
All right, under the trustees tonight, Mr. Belsley.
I had one item. In your board packets, you should have received a copy of ordinance number 1216, and that's an ordinance amending Title VI, Chapter 2, Section 17 of the Village Municipal Code, otherwise known as the noise ordinance. First of all, I appreciate the comments shared by the citizens tonight. Your concerns, along with other complaints this past year, prompted us to take a closer look at our noise ordinance, and in doing so, realize that it was somewhat outdated. It really wasn't relevant to contemporary issues of today. It really addressed primarily historically barking dogs, loud cars, and loud music. But over the years, of course, Morton's grown, and with that, there's a lot more activities that we have, and even more so than that, a lot of outdoor activities. We have marching band contest, a lot of outdoor sporting events, the Pumpkin Festival. We're in the process of planning a new downtown plaza that will have a lot of outdoor activities, so it really needed addressing, making those changes, not only the concerns addressed tonight by the citizens here, but in a holistic manner, looking at this, what's the best for the whole community to address it going forward. Tonight, I intend this to just be a offering or a first reading of the ordinance, and with no vote intended on it, but merely for consideration, discussion, and then it will be placed on public file for the next couple of weeks and will be taken up for a vote at a later board meeting. But just a couple of comments with regard to the revisions in the ordinance. A couple things stood out. One, it was noted that the current ordinance has a specific distance where the audible sound is coming from that is measured and used as a measuring tool, if you will, for a violation. As just some of the comments that were shared tonight, it's very difficult to legislate that. Very difficult. Our police over the years, I think, have done a very good job using good discretion, but for the mere fact of some of the activities I just mentioned, it's just not a practical tool. So that is one of the changes that we actually made in the new revisions, or the amended ordinances, to eliminate that tool. And in place of that, actually also created some exceptions that were more relevant for today's activities. Right now, it's pretty simplistic, the ordinance, as most of you know, and it's more specific with descriptive or identifiable activities that will hopefully address future activities or occurrences, and give more direction to the police department on how to handle those matters. But and then also there's also hours of operation for these activities, whether it's landscaping, construction, or any other activity. There's a specific time for that that was not in the current ordinance, and those for the hours of 8 in the morning to 10 at night. So it does provide more direction. It's more specific, and there's not going to be a perfect ordinance here. As you can see, there's going to have to be a lot of room for common sense. We know that doesn't always apply, but common sense and good discretion is going to be really the hallmark of trying to carry this out to make it meaningful in the future for that. As I mentioned tonight, it's just intended to be a first reading of the ordinance. It will be on file for the public to view and to provide feedback for. I wanted to sort of give these comments and give an overview of it, but I also didn't want to neglect the opportunity for the board, but also specifically Attorney Davies or Chief Hilliard to offer any comments on it also. They worked very closely together on it. I know a lot of time was put into it, a lot of thought. Other communities' ordinances were looked at and reviewed as well. I know there's been discussion with the church's attorney, and I know there's been discussion with the citizens as well. So a lot of thought and consideration has been given to it. Will it be a perfect ordinance? Probably not, but I think it's a lot better than what we have going forward. And with that, I'll open it up to anyone else that wants to comment on it.
Is that 8 in the morning to 10 at night pretty common with other ordinances in other communities? It seems like kind of a long time period.
I don't know if it's common. There's differing times that probably are best set by the community itself. I don't think there's any, you could argue what's more appropriate than not, that could be adjusted.
Or I don't know if weekend would be different than weekday. I don't know if that would matter.
Well, it's been, as was pointed out to me in doing this, we all assume we're first shifters, so to speak. There's no way to address the second and third shift people, so all you can do is try to meld it into what's most appropriate for the most.
So what is in this ordinance to help these citizens with the current problem?
Well, first off, I'd like to follow up on what Trustee Belsley said. I'll take responsibility. Many, many years ago, the noise ordinance was very generally written and, in my view, didn't give any guidance to anything. We put in the 50-foot ordinance primarily to cover barking dogs and loud music. And basically, for 30 years or so, it worked. It's become apparent now that with other matters going on and legitimate questions being raised as to why do you let this go on, can't you hear that? Well, yes, you can. There is no magical way to say what's reasonable or not unreasonable. In a court of law, that's determined by the judge or a jury as to, under the circumstances, whether what's taking place is reasonable or not. A good example, and I talked to a couple judges about this, is there's a statute that's been around for years for disorderly conduct, and it very generally says if somebody does something in an unreasonable manner that tends to provoke a breach of the peace, that can be a basis of disorderly conduct. Now, we could sit here for the rest of the night probably and come up with 100 different scenarios that might occur. So there is no perfect answer. As to this specific case, I think probably further investigation. I'm not going to read every police report that's been made, but I do note that many of them use the term they could hear a faint noise. In my judgment, it would be a little difficult to, if that's what's going to be said, to prove that that's unreasonable and is breaching the peace.
You're all welcome to my house on April.
Ma'am, this is not the time.
There's difference, say, of a periodic thing, say, of church bells. We have people complaining about church bells. That's different than if somebody turns their stereo up on full blast and it's going at 2 a.m. in the morning. I mean, there has to be some common sense. We all have to live together both ways. But there is no perfect answer. You can't look it up in a book and say, okay, say if somebody gets cannabis, you take it to the lab, you test it. That's pretty clear. This is never going to be that clear.
I have two things, and you've spoken to one already, but I'm going to still say it. Three of the items here says unreasonably loud, unreasonably disturbs, unreasonably unreasonable discomfort. I had two people today talk to me about some of the things that were in the newspapers and been discussed. They felt that maybe this law was too vague, and you've spoken to that exactly, that it really comes down to what the court's going to say.
And there are factors set forth, and in the next, you look at those factors, you know, the time that's going on, the duration of the sound, the proximity. These are things a judge or 12 people would hear the facts and decide. Somebody's lawnmower is probably louder and maybe more annoying in the sense that may be going on for an hour. Can you call the police and have them arrest your neighbor? I don't think that would stand.
The second thing I have would be to Mr. Lauterbach is that I think we had an individual this summer who was concerned about some of the construction noise that was occurring at 6 o'clock when it was 95 degrees out during the day. So we would have to look at that and to see the unreasonableness of that and how that relates to here. So you may want to look this over and see how that relates, because there are certain times that we do have to do construction prior to 8 o'clock. Any other items?
Just one observation, Your Honor. When I first moved to Morton, I lived at 389 North Oregon for a number of years. And folks here who are my neighbors, either in reality or in subsequent spirit, I can identify with their concern, noise. And I think there is a distinction, the hum of a neighborhood lawnmower running versus the booming bass of music coming through the wall of your house. And I've experienced that, and it's 5 minutes of it is tolerable, and substantially longer than that's an imposition. I'm not sure what the solution is under the law. I think my general feeling is this ordinance is a step forward, just reading over it. But there's another dimension to it, and that is my biblical knowledge is perhaps a bit rusty, but I remember some reference to charity being a virtue, and I would hope that maybe a more charitable view toward the neighbors would help folks at the church mitigate the sound if it's causing this kind of distress. There ought not to be that kind of conflict between a religious institution and the neighbors. But if it cannot be resolved that way, then I think we have a responsibility and I'd have to provide some help in determining what the acceptable level of exuberance might be.
Any other discussion?
Well, so what are we gonna do if we get 20 of these complaints and it's loud? I wanna know, what are we gonna do?
Well, we'll have to determine that, just like any complaint the police department gets, we have to use judgment in determining whether a violation has been committed, whether it's provable, whether it makes sense for the village to expend money through police usage, attorney usage. All those factors apply every time there's a violation, or alleged violation.
So what I see here happening, if you have another 20 or 30 complaints, the police chief is gonna have to somehow kind of know what's going on with each complaint, and then we're gonna end up in court. And the city attorney's gonna fight this noise, or is that what we're saying?
If it's determined by the police department and myself that there's probable cause that a violation has occurred, it can be taken to court and prosecuted. But I'm not going to sit here and say every time somebody calls that we're going to run down to the courthouse and drag the church into the court. And I would also like to say, and I don't know the facts, I'm not going to speak for the church. I would assume they, based on the fact they've been attacked here tonight, I don't know if it's fair to say they're quite as belligerent as has been said. I think they should probably be given an opportunity to respond.
I'd agree with that, but in me asking these questions, I think it's fair to the church to know what's gonna happen, and to the citizens. I mean, if we're gonna have 20, 30 complaints, and they are legitimate, then I think these people need to know what we're gonna do, as well as the taxpayers and the church. Somewhere we gotta get along, so I just want the church to realize if we pass this and all of us sitting here, are we going to sit here and spend tax dollars fighting this if we have several complaints and we feel the chief sits here and says they are legitimate? I mean, I would take it that's going to be a question we're going to ask him directly, and we decide it is. I think the church needs to know what we're going to do here.
Yes, but yes, the church situation precipitated this discussion, but I don't think it's fair for anybody to sit here and prejudge any situation. Each situation is on its own. If somebody goes out at 2 a.m. in the morning, in my view, that's a little different than 11 a.m. in the morning.
Correct. And I'm not trying to prejudge the church or anything else, but I think both sides of the issue need to know.
Would it be a fair question to ask it this way, that in the past, based on history, have we had a complaint noise that we've had to go to courts over to try to enforce? Have we had that in the last 5 years in Morton?
Not on this type of thing. On barking dogs, yes. On loud stereos, yes. Okay. Probably one or two.
Right. The one thing that I see as the one thing that I see as a problem with that is that those fines are also probably pretty limited, or do they escalate? How does the law work in that regard too?
Okay.
Does that make you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because they could go, okay, well, I'll take the fines.
All right. Under the laws that the Village of Morton has, they can fine somebody $50 to $750 for a violation. Now, I'm telling you, in the real world, if you go to court and try to get a $750 fine for somebody's barking dog, you're going to lose total credibility.
Sure.
I think the same on a noise violation.
Gotcha.
When the courts are inundated with numerous serious problems that people can't deal with.
So we need to come up, in my mind, that's one of the, I think that's what you're trying to get to, Jeff, is that if we've got a $250 fine and that keeps happening, they could probably work that into their budget if they were going to look at it in those terms. So we need to figure out a solution, another type of solution where we can come together and work as a community to figure it out. I mean,
that's my argument. I'm not trying to castigate the church, but obviously there's an issue here. It would be far better if it could be resolved mutually than having to come into a confrontational position.
Would it be unreasonable, and I would be willing to do it, to try to meet with one of the leaders of the church to get their, not that, their perspective is unaccounted for, but to actually get it from them to see what their position is, so that we know what we're going into here, because that could help us make a little bit better decision on what we're working with.
I'm meeting with the minister in a week.
Perfect. There we go. He would have been the guy I appointed to, not me.
I'm just saying.
No,
he catches on good, right?
But that aside, good work on the noise ordinance. I think it's a step forward.
And I would say I believe the church's attorney is there, and we have been working with them and trying to come up with what everybody's suggesting. But as you've stated, it's going to require everybody giving a little. There's no question about it. I like to go to court, but it isn't the thing to be going to court over.
Working out.
Especially with our present ordinance.
Oh, yes. I would say Mr. Hall would have very easily defeated that ordinance. So
I've seen him grin before.
Oh, going to court's the last thing we want. I mean, that's the last resort.
Right. Yeah. That's why we're spending all this time on it, is to avoid that.
All right, we had two people raise their hands during our discussions. We do not usually open it up to the community during the board meeting. Is there any interest of calling upon those two and asking for a couple of minutes of what they wanted to point out to us?
I think now is the appropriate time.
I think it's very.
I saw Mr. Ranta's hand go up, I think.
I think you had a very appropriate thing to say. I think it said something along the line of coming to your house and hearing it.
I went over there one morning once and asked him to please stop.
At what time?
4 in the morning, in my pajamas, to tell them to please stop.
Well, that's the first I've heard of that. I don't know.
It isn't just during the church service, with all due respect to them. It's practice. It's Sunday afternoon. It's Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening during church service, and Wednesday night during church service. It isn't just during the service. It's during the practice time as well. I mean, a baby is being woken up. I don't believe that we're being unreasonable. We can't sit outside and enjoy the calmness and just enjoy ourselves, having friends over in our backyard without listening to the bass of this music constantly. I mean, little innocent children are being woken up. Families are being disturbed. This is true fact. We're not making this up.
They've been walking through my yard since they're parking on the street to get to the church.
Pete?
I've heard the comments from Mr. Davies in the past, and their lawyer in the past, from the church that are meeting about, there's nothing more than a lawnmower running. Lawnmowers don't have a volume knob. The church does. Just turn it down. That's all we're asking. That's all we're asking. Peaceful community, this ordinance here, gonna make it a loud community. Just like you pointed out. Gonna provide the police department to come by and decide this and that, lose opinion, back and forth, then it has to go to court. How many phone calls, as it was pointed out? How many times are we gonna do it? For 16 months, over 55 calls, no fines, no violations, still going on. it's going to last that long, exactly like you said. It's going to you don't have measurability, you don't have a way to say it's going to be an opinion. And that's going to drag on forever.
I do have one more thing. We're at the VFW, and when they used to have wedding receptions and that out there, they built those houses out there. We have to shut it down at 10 o'clock. We have police come out there and tell us we cannot have the doors open, music has to be soft, and the VFW can't do it, but this church can. That makes no sense to me.
I understand your point, but just a point of reference, that is under a different law, the liquor ordinance.
noise.
But it's noise. I understand that, but it's under a different law right now. All right, thank you for your comments, and I think all of our phone numbers are on our websites and everything, so don't be afraid to, if something comes up that you forgot to mention tonight or whatever, please give us a call. We're all open to this. It's a concern that we want solved, and so we're doing the best we can at this point. Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Belsley?
Nothing more.
Do we have to vote on?
No, we're holding it till next meeting.
I mean, we don't have to vote on forwarding it.
No. Mr. Hare.
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Mrs. Herman.
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Mr. Kaufman.
Only that the yard waste is open till November 11th, and will be closed down for 3 days, open back up November 14th to December 2nd. That's all I have, Your Honor.
So we're going to be closed for 2 days, actually.
True.
Thank you. Mr. Newhouse.
2 items tonight, Your Honor. I'll take the second one first, if I may. Before the Plan Commission last month was a request by Tracy Lacanor for a new daycare and education center at the former church site on Queenwood. That's the 260 Queenwood address where we had looked ourselves at that church at one point. This is a special use recommendation. The services include second shift childcare. It's a faith-based organization. There will be religious instruction and practice. It will complement existing services and also will include a number of new jobs for fully qualified teachers with full benefits. So, good addition to the community. Recommend approval.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Belsley.
Yes.
Hare.
Yes.
Herman.
Yes.
Kaufman.
Yes.
Newhouse.
Yes.
Yarko.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay. The other item is one that we have discussed in the past. It's come up before with a number of developers over the years. It has now made its way through the Plan Commission, and that is the consideration of an alternative to the existing minimum 75-foot requirement for a lot size. Current ordinance, 75 feet wide except for corner lots, which must be larger, and a minimum of 7,500 square feet. At least one builder has made a very cogent argument for an option on lot sizes with deeper rear yards that would respond both to an emerging market in which people appear to want houses that would fit in those lots and have a deeper backyard, so a marketing issue, as it were, and a practical consideration in fitting in with the configuration of a development, allowing some alternatives and dealing in particular with areas maybe where those lots would abut streets or power lines or something of that nature. After careful review and a lot of hard work by village attorney and planning and zoning officer and some others associated with this, and certainly by the Plan Commission, we have a recommendation in your packet for an alternative ordinance called R1A, in which lots shall have an area of not less than 8,000 square feet and a width of not less than 65 feet at the building line. So that means that while the building line width has gone down, the total square footage has gone up from 7,500 feet, and that is the protective device built into the proposal to make sure that in the process of making narrower lots, we do not pave the way for lower cost, poorer quality housing that, to quote one of the plan commissioners, would hurt the Morton brand. And the plan commissioners have recommended unanimously approval of R1A. You will also notice in your notes that there was an R1B alternative for lots of 6,500 square feet and permitting a 60-foot width at the building line, not to exceed 30% of the number of lots in any subdivision. Now, this would probably enhance the ability of some developers to work around certain configurations, and certainly in areas where the property would abut, say, a fire station or a thoroughfare or a power line right away. However, the plan commissioners again agreed that while they would recommend the R1A provision, they excluded the R1B provision. And that's what we have in front of us tonight. I think this is important enough that it needs two readings. It fundamentally changes the way we think about building lots in Morton. I have heard there are people concerned about it. We have asked for folks who have concerns to contact us to attend meetings. None have done so. But I think it is significant enough change that it needs to be carefully considered and make sure that we don't wind up like other folks have, with law of unintended consequences coming back to haunt us later on. The current builder who is seeking this change, I think, has everyone's full confidence. No one is concerned that there will be a loss of quality in those homes. But once the ordinance is passed, it basically opens up the opportunity. And when Farmer Jones sells a plot of land to Developer Smith, then Developer Smith's following these rules and these rules only potentially. So I would like everyone to review it. I'd like any comment that, if there's anybody out there who has a concern, I'd like to hear about it. But I think it would be appropriate to give it discussion, but to make a second reading mid-month, I don't think that would do much harm to the process to delay it for another 2 weeks. It's important. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
So you say we're not going to be addressing the B?
B is not in the current proposal. Just to remind us of all, we have the opportunity, the right, to accept a plan commission recommendation, to deny it, to change it on our own, or to send it back for further review. We have a high degree of confidence and high reliance on the plan commission, generally accept plan commission recommendations, sometimes with some modification. But we have those options. So the current offering, to simple answer your question, is current proposal, current offering is provision for R1A, but no provision for R1B.
So reading this ordinance, it is possible to have an entire subdivision in R1A?
That is what it says. Now, I have seen developments done this way. I've seen pictures of developments and visited, I think, one that you would have to say complies. And the deeper backyard can be done very nicely. In fact, it's some of the illustrations used by the builder in his presentation were very, very attractive. Question comes: is that the direction that is that what we think makes good land use and good process for Morton?
Was there discussion about a percentage of R-1A in the subdivision?
There was not.
And Steve, the current is 75 feet wide, yes, with 7,500 square feet, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And the 65-foot alternate would actually increase the square footage to 8,000 square feet. So that's, again, that's kind of the quality control device. I'm fairly confident in that, but again, because of the importance, I think it needs just careful scrutiny.
Which other communities have gone to 60 or 65-foot lots without that security option?
Just about all of them.
Just about all of them. So again,
Peoria,
right.
Yes, we are the.
I think Metamora is the only one that's the same as us.
Yeah, I think Metamora is the same as us. But others have done this. Washington provides latitude in this respect. We are, perhaps with Metamora, the lone holdouts for a minimum 75-foot wide lot. In some ways, that's benefited Morton. It's accounted for the kind of housing that we all say makes Morton. But the question we have to ask ourselves is, giving market changes and young families who maybe would like a 2,500 square foot house, very nice house, but would like a narrower lot, but a deeper lot, are we shooting ourselves in the foot by not providing this kind of an alternative?
But some of these other communities right now are offering the 65-foot lots.
65 and 60
the same
and
depth. The same depth. I mean, they're not going deeper.
Some of them are less specific about depth than this ordinance is, but yes, generally speaking. And if you leave it up to the developer, then a high-quality developer says, well, obviously we want a deeper back lot, and that has some impact on managing drainage. And correct me if I'm wrong, but Mr. Loudermilk, but we're talking here about, in some cases, linear drainage control rather than a circular detention pond. Is that not correct?
Yeah, in some of these cases we got the longer backyards, trying to make it a little more appealing to the eye. We're trying to work on the stormwater detention. So,
which may lay in those back ends of those lots.
Exactly.
Instead of a ditch somewhere.
100%.
Yeah, so they can be, again, I've seen them done, they can be very attractive. I think there's more management or maintenance involved, or maybe more engineering involved in creating a linear water detention system than a traditional circular one. But they can be very attractive.
I would think this would be a good start and a safe, because it's 8,000 square feet. I doubt if a developer's going to come in and make all the lots this deep. I could see the center of the area this deep, but I would think some of the outer edges, they wouldn't necessarily go that deep, because the center they could use for the water retention. So I think you'll end up seeing this as part of the development.
I agree with you in this. Setting this aside, though, I do want to speak to R-1B, I guess it is. 2 points, and you pretty well brought both of them up. Sometime in the future, I think we are going to have to look at enticing people to purchase land next to the towers, the electrical towers. And to do that, I think it's going to have to be an affordable lot, an affordable house. So somewhere down the line, I think that this board and the Plan Commission is going to have to look at that again. I'm not suggesting they look at it now, but look at it again. And the second reason for that is there's discussion in our comprehensive plan about affordable housing. This will potentially help a little bit, but not that much, because if anything, we raised the square footage. And so the lot costs are not necessarily going to be a whole lot different. But we are going to have to figure out a way to entice people to purchase lots and build houses next to the interstate, as Mr. Newhouse said, next to the firehouses and next to our electrical lines. So sometimes down the road, I think we are going to have to relook at 1-2B.
But I think we should do it sooner than later, because I think if we have that ordinance in place, you look at like the end of Idlewood, at the very end of Idlewood, you have high towers. We're never going to get that developed and get it hooked onto the current subdivision that's going there. So in the end, if your water lines aren't hooked, you go back to those old issues of stinky water and everything else. So I think as you're trying to sell that property or encourage development to hook up where our infrastructure is, if we have those ordinances in place and these developers know that there's some savings here, maybe they'll realistically get those areas that we need developed. So I would encourage the planning commission to address it, because I think we need to be proactive and be ready for the developers, not react.
I've been pretty busy on this. I was going to give them 6 months off.
One way of thinking about this is to look at the provision we made a couple of years ago at Tuscany Villas, where we took the R2 lots and allowed them, in particular because the utilities were already in, allowed them to be platted as single family homes on the same original 120-foot lot size. And there's a case where you have very nice houses built on small lots in a way that's attractive. So small doesn't have to be cheap or ugly. We just want to make sure that people's if we change this, that people's expectations are met, and that we have some assurance on our own that we're taking Morton in the right direction. And I've lived in places in the world where beautiful houses are done on relatively small lots, some of them far more expensive than I will ever be able to afford, and very attractive. So in Florida, you've got 50-foot wide lots, 100 feet deep, with $1 million houses sitting on them. And in the UK, where I lived, had some beautiful developments in which the houses were almost interconnected, but divided with landscaping or other visual devices, so they didn't appear to be one on top of the other. It's extremely successful. So it can be done, but the question is this the right fit for us? I just think it needs some careful thought, and I would encourage all of the trustees maybe to go take a look around town in the next 2 weeks, take a look at Tuscany Villas, and take a look at what's going on at Fieldstone, which is where the 65-foot lots implementation would start, and see what you think. And if there are folks at home watching, or people who are going to read the newspaper, and you've got an opinion, now is the last chance to get it to us, because we're going to vote on this 2 weeks from tonight.
I would like to talk about a couple other things. A lot of other towns do have the 65-foot lots. Tuscany Village, Roger, those duplex lots had to be 120.
Yeah, most of them were 120 plus, and they split them, and what's there now are 62, give or take, foot lots. Same number of living units, that they would have had if they were a duplex. Now they're single family.
But to address the affordable issue, I'm not so sure that in the percentages you talked about, that in an area like this, that we shouldn't consider 65-foot lots the normal depth of percentage. Because when you look at Tuscany Village, that thing has just taken off. And those homes are very nice. I don't want just tract housing to come to town, but I think a percentage, because they have all the area all the way to Jackson. And if you would put a percentage of allowable, if they wanted to, because I've gone through some of those open houses out there, and those lots are normal depth. I see no hurting to narrow the lots down 10, because that's where the market is today. Everybody's building 40, 50-foot lots, houses, I mean, the house prints are. We still offer in Morton if you want to have 75-foot lots, but I think we should probably have a few lots where it's 65 normal depth. They can put as many of these as they want, 65 deep. But I think we should have a percentage of the narrow lots, because Tuscany Village is successful. And one reason we passed that ordinance, and me and Mr. Newhouse worked on that, was that the banks weren't loaning money to duplexes. So now you look at that, all them roads would be sitting there deteriorating. Now we have houses on them paying taxes. We're selling them water and gas. And I think when you start doing a big subdivision, there are going to be some houses, you could poke any one of those houses into the subdivision, and they're very appropriately and very nice. I would challenge anybody to walk through those floor plans out there. So I think a subdivision today needs to have a little bit, and we do need affordable housing such as that. So
You say Jackson Street, and by they you mean the Fieldstone development.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I'm just using them as example because they've done a lot, but when you look at that much square footage, and if they lay this out and they know they could get a few of these Tuscany Village homes there, I think we would have a good market, because we are competing against the other areas here to get our housing. So I think I would certainly support voting for 65-foot, a percentage of the area. And I only do that percentage now for the protection, so I don't get somebody bringing the same house and building 20 of them down the street.
The one
Incidentally,
thing with Tuscany is, just remember that, I mean, that's got some unique drainage areas. There's no back-to-backs either. So you don't have the, you know, a 7,800-foot lot with a 65-foot front would be 120-foot deep. I would say Tuscany is the deeper ones, being that the stormwater retention ponds there. So you're not seeing that 100-foot deep lot there either, as far as that square footage, you know what I mean?
Incidentally, just, again, baseline for everybody, it is my understanding that the developer of Fieldstone talked to all of the existing customers, those people to whom they had already sold houses, and have general, if not absolutely specific, concurrence from those people to proceed on this basis. So no one testified against, and my understanding is that they were diligent in talking to the people. I checked with at least one resident there, said yes, they came and talked to me, and
Those residents,
general level of acceptance.
those residents would rather see the development get finished
Yeah.
than to take.
Dead-end streets.
Yeah. And they're not all going to be 65. There's a range, there'll be a mix. So, again,
Yeah.
presumably quite attractive.
I think we need to attract young families and give them affordable housing. Everyone's made that clear that that's a priority, and I know I would like to have my children living here and have a place that they could afford, so I think that there's some good to it.
But what has also happened out of Tuscany, it's not all young families. It's some retired people that are selling their older homes that maybe are more affordable to the young couple, and they're building all new and having it, but they don't want these huge yards. So I think there's a benefit to everybody there to have a mix, and I think we should try to encourage it, and I think a percentage would save us, but again, I think we'd be ahead of the ball here.
Okay. Mrs. Yarko?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Okay, by my notes here, ordinance number 12-16 and ordinance number 12-14 will be placed on our next meeting agenda.
Yeah.
All right. You guys are breaking my record here, you know that, don't you?
I'd just like to
Closed sessions tonight. Closed session for purpose of discussing the purchase or lease of real property for the use of the public pursuant to Section 2C5 of the Open Meetings Act. Second is purpose of discussing the sale of property owned by a public body pursuant to Section 2C6 of the Open Meetings Act. Excuse me. And the third one is closed session for purpose of discussing collective negotiation matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees pursuant to Section 2C2 of the Open Meetings Act. May I have a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
And we have a second. Mr. Newhouse, roll call.
Herman.
Yes.
Kaufman.
Yes.
Newhouse.
Yes.
Yarko.
Yes.
Belsley.
Yes.
Pear.
Yes.
Going to be doing something a little different tonight. Our room next door is set up for the elections tomorrow, and so we're going to have to ask the people in the audience to leave within the next 5 minutes or so, and if you want to stay in your cars, we'll open up the door when we're done, or if not, have a good evening. I'm sorry, there will be no action. Yeah, there will be no action afterwards.